This is the Delicious Recap. It's our recap of the 90s sitcom Family Matters. I'm Jon Francois. Andrew, who are you choosing to be this week?
My name is Star Andrews. If you are not familiar with who Star Andrews is, Star Andrews is the first Black figure skater in history to win a Grand Prix medal. She won a silver at one of the championships figure skating competitions, and she is literally the first Black person ever in the history of them. They've been going on for like 100 years to win a medal. So I am Star Andrews today.
When does this happen?
This happened 2 weeks ago, and I just found out about it today.
Oh, cool. Do we know if Star Andrews is a Family Matters fan at all? That would be great.
You know what? Maybe she is. And, because I share part of her greatness with my name, maybe she'll be like, hey, I watch Family Matters. Come and talk to me about it.
Yeah. I mean, it definitely helps that, Andrew, Star Andrews, that there's like a basis of a connector. So, yeah, you'll have to get back to me on that.
I had to do it because it's a first, and I love figure skating. I know we talk about Family Matters here, but sports, sometimes I watch the sports. And this is a sport that I love.
I wonder if there's like any sport besides basketball, or if there's like any figure skating showcased at all on Family Matters.
You know what? I actually wonder, because I remember Michelle Kwan being on the TGIF lineup before. So maybe she might have been in a Family Matters episode, or maybe there was something that had to do with the Olympics in one of the episodes. But I remember Michelle Kwan being on one of the TGIF sets doing something.
I have no idea who she is. I take it she's like a very famous figure skater.
Yes, she's very famous. I mean, she's secondly famous to Tanya Harding and beating Nancy Kerrigan's knee. So, well, she's the third most famous, because we got Nancy Kerrigan's knee, Tanya Harding, and then Michelle Kwan.
Okay, fair enough. All right, we're talking about In a Jam, Season 1, Episode 19, original air date March 16th, 1990, written by Alan Eisenstock and Larry Mintz. The wonderful Rich Carell directed this one. We have guest starring Jaleel White as Steve Urkel. Randy Jocelyn comes back once again as Rodney Beckett. Ebony Smith as Penny Pizer. Marcus Redman as Bull. Tom Henschel as, I assume, the stage manager from that television station, Jimmy. And then we have Rick Scary as the reporter. Our Hulu synopsis: while Carl auditions for a job as a television traffic reporter, Eddie helps Steve with a school bully. All right, Andrew Vandertunt, what did you think about this episode? Give me everything. I'm here to listen, because, side note, I'm trying to finish sucking off a cough drop. So you talking would be so great right now.
We need to title this episode "Sucking Off a Cough Drop." That is what it needs to be titled. I don't care who gets offended. That is what it is. Balls in your mouth.
Man, nothing to do with the episode. Just me sucking on a cough drop while we're recapping Family Matters. I like that.
Well, please enjoy it.
Yeah, as I finish my cough drop, man, I mean, you just eat everything. I mean, what stood out to you in this episode?
So this was an interesting episode to me. This was one of those episodes where I was like, not expecting to fall in love with the story that was not the main story. And I actually love the side story so much more. So Carl getting a chance to do news television as the traffic reporter, I was in love with it. I was entranced. I love the corny jokes that Rachel wrote. I'm actually going to steal one of those jokes. I'm going to have to watch it over again. But the one about the guy and his doctor not calling him for 24 hours after he found out he only had 48 hours to live, I screamed. I was on my couch and I was visibly laughing, because that was actually hilarious. Really, this episode, it was one of those ones that left a little bit to be desired. So we get Steve getting bullied. We've got Carl getting a new opportunity. And what I can tell, and I don't know if you've picked up on it, you can tell that this show is now splitting even more from the Steve Urkel turn that we got, because they're giving a lot more screen time to the kids and trying to develop these kid stories. But you can tell none of the writers have any idea what a kid's life is like.
Give me an example. What do you mean?
So the bullying situation with Steve and the money and all these things. Steve is perpetually broke. So what money is he giving to this bully? And what bully is actually going to go after Steve Urkel when he literally carries nothing but a briefcase that has papers in it, hopefully? And he eats dog treats and anchovy paste. So what are you really getting from this kid? That's how you know they are not like up with the times. Because there's a bunch of other kids who are in that shop that kid could have bullied and got shoes from, money, all kinds of stuff, because they're all afraid of him. So I could just tell.
Yeah, I mean, I think in particular, the cold open, we get even more of the parental abuse situation from Herb and Diane. I don't think they would be the type of parents that would give Steve any money whatsoever. So to think that Bull Wesson would be this dumb to pick on little Urkel, man, because he picks on him every single day. Mm-hmm. So over the course of picking on him every single day, you get to know the kid, you get to know who he's about and maybe what his inner lifestyle is like. So yeah, I think that was a little naive on Mr. Wesson's part to assume that Steve had anything to give him besides, little crusty anchovy paste in his pocket.
Right. And I don't like that we typecast bullies. Bullies are not always bigger than the people that they bully. They're not always. Sometimes they're smaller. Sometimes they're very frail. Sometimes they're very healthy weighted. I didn't know a way to say that, but they may be shaped like me, and that could be that person could be a bully. And I just don't like how they typecast. It's always this giant kid who's failed 45 times. And it's like, no, we could have gotten a more realistic person to be Steve's bully if he was going to get bullied. And then the other side of it, I just feel like this bully story, it was so undeveloped. It just came out of nowhere. All of a sudden, we know Steve is getting bullied when we had a gold mine with Carl and this news time. Because the news time, that's so relatable to me of just getting pulled into a situation where you're talking on TV and you don't know what to do. And I thought it would have been an amazing thing to just have that as the full show.
I thought Reginald sold the comedy of that situation very well. It was one of those interesting things where to me, it worked okay as a B story. I could see it being an A story, but the way it was as a B story, Reginald, he just, again, with his just his energy, both, vocally and facial expressions, just everything, he sold it. He's the guy that you want to see making corny jokes as someone is apparently going to die from a car accident. Like, he just has that charm about him. Mm-hmm. So I thought that story was surprisingly decent, given the fact that we've had a track record of not so great B stories. And also, in one instance, I think the last episode, a C story that was shoved in for no reason. So, going back to your point about, the way that bullies always seem to look, I think that this Bull Wesson, this dark-skinned, beefy, tall-looking guy, he reminds me of the bank robber from a Doogie Howser episode that I watched with my then girlfriend, now my wife, and her friend back in the day. And it's interesting. I feel bad for dark-skinned guys of color who have that build, a cruel stereotype at this point. I mean, it's one thing to portray it in Family Matters, which is already diversified enough as it is, with a predominantly black cast. An all black cast, really. I mean, anybody who's going to be white is going to be a supporting or a guest member. But especially when it's on a show like Doogie Howser, which is pretty white. Oh, God. Like, the bully, the robber, has to come in the form of this intimidating-looking, dark-skinned, beefy black man. Ooh, watch out. Mm-hmm. So I thought that was an unfortunate choice. And I would have liked to have seen what else they could have came up with. There are some light-skinned bullies. They could come in the form of light-skinned black people. So, we'll see how that evolution develops as we go along. I mean, I have plenty of I'm not going to lie, because I'm me and I just don't know how to do things differently and change well. Like, I broke down my thoughts based on scene by scene by scene. So you'll have to be patient with me. Once you're done, I want to give you the chance to, say anything else that you thought about the episode.
It is okay, because my mind, everything is meshed into this one web of this episode that I watched. Really, the only other thing that I had for this episode, which I really did enjoy, was Eddie's fashion. Eddie, his fashion was on point this episode. Like, every outfit had a purpose. The color schemes were good. His hair is perfect. Like they really, wardrobe went to Eddie and they really dressed him well for this episode. I enjoyed seeing his fashion choices. Now we got a couple of repeat outfits, I think, or at least one repeated thing from Laura. And it's that hideous freaking sweater. Throw that thing away and burn it. That should have been the bully of the episode. The freaking sweater. That thing is a bully. It takes up all the screen time and I can't stand that thing.
Yeah, that Cool Runnings Jamaican bobsleddy vibe sweater that she's worn many, many times again. Yep, I know what you're talking about. I think Judy had some kind of like jeans overall skirt dressy thing, which was cool. But yeah, certainly Laura is repeating some fashion, and unlike Eddie, who has certainly repeated fashion, there are some fashion choices with Laura where it's like, oh, burn that now.
It's just some of the choices they put her in. I'm like, okay, you can at least make it match, like make it look good at least, because it just looks like they just went to the bargain bin and wardrobe and are like, throw this on, girl. Just throw it on. It looks good. You'll be fine. There is one thing, and it is the blackest thing I've seen in Family Matters yet, and I love it. On the news, of course, Carl shouts out his mom when he is getting interviewed and ice creamed. I love it. I wanted to ask you, it is the only question I have in my notes that I need to know, Jon. Have you ever been interviewed on the news and shouted out somebody? Like video, live, on the streets?
No, I don't recall ever being one of those on the street interviews on the local news. Like, oh yeah, my neighbor, I never really knew him. He was a quiet person that just happened to shoot like 28 people. Like, I've never been that person, thank God. The closest that I've had to local news coverage, God, it was like back in college. Someone must have done a drawing in my high school newspaper that was considered very controversial, risque, offensive, whatever you call it. And I decided to interview them on a radio show that I was doing on campus. Stupid me, like I had the opportunity to record this, but I didn't. And I think that, the Channel 3 News in Connecticut, which is a big local news outlet in the state, wanted to interview me because they had picked up somehow that I had, interviewed this person. They wanted to see if there was any footage or any recording or whatever, and I didn't have it. So that's probably the closest that I've come to any local news notoriety or fame. What about you? I mean, have you had any local news fame like that?
I have been on the news, I think, like 10 times now.
Damn.
I think it's like 10 or 12 times. I've been on the local news a lot, just through protest work, through the nonprofit clinic I worked for. And for some reason and somehow, every Pride festival, I end up on the news. I always end up on the news. They talk to me and I end up looking crazy because typically I'm covered head to toe in glitter. So all you see is the shiny black man on television with rainbows all over him. So, but yeah, I've been on the news, but I have been that person who's gotten interviewed in a moment on the street. And I was like, oh my God, I'm on the news. Hi, Mom. They played it and my mom had the video and I still to this day want to find it so that way I can upload it online because it was hilarious.
Yeah, I mean, look, I'm not surprised. I mean, the local news is certainly great for animated personalities like yourself. So, especially if you're dressed head to toe in a very loud outfit for Pride, that's what it's all about. Be loud and proud. Yeah, of course you're going to be on TV. They wouldn't just give that to old redneck Gary by the corner store over there. They're going to give that to Andrew Vandertunt, the spotlight.
You never know. He might be talking about America. Ooh, that was my country accent. It was a little America. He might be talking about that. And the news might have to say, hey, okay, girl, we'll see you later with your glitter. We're going to go talk to him.
Right. Hey, I believe you with that country accent. You spent some time in Texas. You sounded pretty natural there. So I want to start with the cold open. So, we have Carl and Eddie fixing the VCR, or is it a stereo player? I was trying to figure out what it was. Was it a VCR, a stereo player?
It's a VCR. You may be too young for it. That was like the standard VCR type that most families would have. I had one of those and it was big, like this massive thing. And the tape deck opens up and down.
Jesus Christ. Okay. I'm so glad that I missed that. That sounds very complicated. So Carl is, fixing this thing with Eddie. He's yelling at him to eject, because Eddie fucked up something. I don't know if you ever had that relationship with your dad where inevitably like you're fixing stuff with him, like he needs your help on things and you're quite clueless on how to do what he's asking you to do? Because I had that moment quite a bit with my dad when I was growing up, and I know it's like brought out for comedy when it's like eject, but I was just like, oh god, this moment between Carl and Eddie, like that reminds me of me and my dad growing up, because I was just in total nervousness and in my head when it came to doing any sort of fix-it stuff with him.
My brother, he and my dad have that because they fix everything together. Me, I was always like, I'm not fixing that. That's what we have people to call for. I never did, because my dad would flip out if you mess something up.
Yeah. Oh, God, those dads. And then we have Steve popping out of nowhere in the middle of Carl and Eddie. Now, this is the first of maybe 2 or 3 times that I'm going to pick up on this. Did you notice that when Steve popped out, there was a brief female scream from the studio audience?
I'm reacting like that because in my notes, I have called her Sarah. She screams so many times.
He's love Urkel. What can I say? I mean, he is obviously much too young to be considered the sex symbol that Stefan will eventually be. But I mean, he is I'm going to give you a tease. This plays a part in my rating system. Is I'm hearing audience reactions to Urkel entrances now. So that was and it's nice to know that we've identified her, because I just thought I was going to name her as like, oh, unidentified female scream. But if you want to name her Sarah, let's name her Sarah. Let's do that.
Okay. I gave her a name because she's involved in my rating as well.
Oh.
That much interference from her.
I wonder what part of the rating. That's going to be interesting to pick up. And then my last thing on the cold open is like we have a slight twist on the callback of Carl always fucking up house projects, because now it's Steve doing it, because I think Steve like he physically tries to help out Carl and Eddie with the VCR thing, and then the electricity somehow turns off. So I appreciated the callback, but with a little bit of a mixture. It's like, now that we have Steve into this, we could add Steve into the mix of Winslow fucked up house projectness.
Mm-hmm. I loved that moment that they did have him there together. They're having this little hijink of something is about to break, and Steve is refining his "did I do that?"
Yeah, I don't know how many did I do that time we've gotten so far. I feel like this is only maybe like the 3rd or 4th one, but you could tell with it obviously being more than once or twice that, you know, they're trying to establish a thread with that phrase. Scene 1 with, again, I think we're going to call her Sarah. Like Urkel is, starting the scene. He's greeting the Winslow kids coming into the kitchen through the back porch door. I think they're doing homework together at the kitchen table. And there's the sound of a female going, "What?" as Steve is coming in. And, Urkel mania, man, picking up steam.
There's something about it. Those people are entrenched. I'm just throwing out a theory here. Maybe she's from the sorority that is the alternative of the fraternity that the guys came to when they first saw Urkel.
You know what? That could be something. We always hear about that fraternity of guys that, was like Urkel at his first appearance. But yet have we heard about a sorority of female fans led by Sarah and her sidekick, Letitia.
Yes, Sarah Letitia.
And then Laura was asking Steve if his parents feed him, because of course Steve is coming in just casually going for food. And I love it, the Herb and Diane thing. We're going back to that. He's like, not every day. And the audience has a big laugh at that. And I get why it's funny, but take the sitcom part out of it and it's like, oh, let's call child services on Herb and Diane.
I immediately was like, something's not right here. This child's not being fed every day and he's coming over here begging for food.
Yeah. And then, God, I feel like Urkel has been my spirit animal, because I think he had maybe had 2 or 3 references to mucus or coughing up phlegm. Remember that random moment? Remember that random moment where he coughed up phlegm? And it's just, I don't know. It just reminded me of just random points in the podcast where I had to like stop and just cough up a little loogie, and all you had to do was just awkwardly laugh there on the side.
I wanted to ask you if you related to that scene. Did you feel seen when Steve had his mucus?
It's already enough that I share a birthday with Jaleel. Now we have the same phlegm problem. What's going on? And that, I am totally with you on the Eddie fashion thing, because a point I had here, Eddie wore a bright orange sweater. It was tucked into what I initially thought was light blue jeans, but I think they're gray dress pants.
They were definitely flowy. They looked like a dress pant. I couldn't figure out what color, but it was dark.
Okay. I don't see a sweater tucked in very often. Is that a fashion that people are still having? Is that something that was really big in the 90s?
I know it was big in the 90s. The main person I remember is The Rock. He would always have like a turtleneck dress shirt on or like a sweater tucked into his jeans, very flat. So it was a thing. It was big.
Yeah, now you're making me think of that young 80s photo of The Rock with the tucked in turtleneck and the jeans and stuff like that. And I think that photo that kept on resurfacing was the basis of a television series based on his younger years that came out not too long ago. I think it was called Rock or something.
Yes. I remember the show. I don't remember what it was called, but it was based on that one photo, and they went back and created a whole life for him.
Yeah. And then we get to a point where I felt like Eddie was more clueless than he usually is, because, Urkel is talking about how he, doesn't have lunch because a bully always steals his lunch money. You remember when Eddie was just casually like, oh, so just don't give him his money. And it's like, dude, oh God, we can tell you're a tall man with muscle who thinks that life is as easy as you think it is, and clearly it's not. You have a teeny man, Steve, who lives it very differently.
Now, was that relatable to you during the show, the bullying situation? Have you ever dealt with something like that?
I mean, the probably the most bullying that I could recall was back in elementary school when I got teased for my last name. My last name being Francois, I was always like, oh, that Frenchy boy, blah, blah, blah. Luckily, I don't recall anything physical ever happening. I think aside from my last name, there was always this little sort of hors d'oeuvre of acceptance into the cool kids group every now and then. So I think I was okay. I don't know if it was the same experience for you. What was it like?
I initially got bullied a lot in school. And then my gay superpower of reading came out, and I would go for the jugular. So kids would never mess with me once I finally started embarrassing them. So I got bullied in the beginning, but then afterwards, once it came out, I was like, oh, I know how to read people. Boom. No more bullying, because nobody wanted to get talked about.
There you go. I like that. Mm-hmm. When Eddie was drinking that glass of milk, I was thinking, when was the last time you just saw someone drinking a glass of milk? I don't see that anymore.
I find that to be sacrilegious, offensive, aggressive, predatory, murderous. Like, you should never drink a glass of cow juice. That is disgusting.
Okay, you're biased because you're vegan. You know what? I take that back. I see my wife every now and then. She likes to drink a glass of chocolate milk. But I think you have that bias because you know that once you take that first sip, you are shitting your brains out all night.
That is part of it. But then I also know what milk is, and that is why I refuse to touch it.
God, you're going to make me watch a documentary on Netflix that's going to make me question my choices for drinking milk, aren't you?
I mean, if you choose to watch it, you can watch it. But if you've seen a cow get milked and then you know what milk is, you probably wouldn't drink it. And I don't want to ruin anybody's appetite, so I'm not telling you.
Okay, so is almond milk okay? Because that's what I drink.
Almond milk is fine.
Okay, we're good then. Give that to my wife to watch, because she's just like, simple American, drink the whole milk and then just move on with her life. And then Eddie had a response to Steve's suggestion of helping him out with this bully. I thought it was interesting because I felt like it added on to the bullying by being like, oh, nuh-uh, Urkel, I don't want to be hanging around you. So there you go. And then I think my last point on scene one, when Steve was talking about the anchovy paste, is that something that you've ever had? I didn't even know that was a thing. And I don't even know if I want to taste it because it's fish and it's paste. Like, what could be more putrid?
I've never had the paste. I do know that it existed, but I've never had the paste. But the last time I did have anchovies, which was maybe like 15 years ago, they were delicious. So I can't imagine that it's that bad.
Okay. Did you have it on pizza by any chance?
No, I just ate them straight out of the can with some crackers.
Yeah, because I think my first awareness of anchovies was like as a pizza topping. So, and I think in pop culture, especially in kids' TV, it was always seen as like, oh my God, anchovies. Ew, it's fish. Ew. It's like Brussels sprouts used to be back in the 90s. So that was interesting. Anyway, so we go to scene 2. We have Carl coming into the living room from work. He's excitingly telling his family he's on the news. And I thought automatically, I don't know if you thought this as well, noticeable contrast from the last time Carl was on the news. It was a much more solemn occasion where he was outed as the quote-unquote villain that arrested the family's favorite television star, Buddy Goodrich.
Should have left Buddy alone. I do think that Carl being on the news in a new light is actually pretty nice. So we get to see a happy Carl on the news, not a very befuddled or confused Carl.
Yes. And I thought with this traffic reporter story, because I texted you, I said, oh my God, this makes zero sense from the get-go. It's cute and funny. And you already know the humor that's going to come with the idea of Carl, with his goofy personality being the traffic TV reporter. I think in this instance where he was making humor about a bank robbery he stopped, I thought in real life that would be difficult to picture because it's like, it's a bank robbery. People could have been killed by the robber. Carl possibly could have been killed himself. So that's where it started off very strange to me because I mean, unless I'm wrong, because you worked in the 911 bit of the police thing, have you seen police officers make public humor out of what could really be a serious life-threatening situation?
100%. Working at 911 myself for 5 years and then working with police departments, knowing police officers just through those connections, and even us, it's how you handle, and when I say us, I mean the dispatchers and the telecommunicators who are talking to the public, dispatching these calls for help that are very intense. And other people who don't work in that field, you would not laugh at it. You would think that is horrible to say. This is terribly unfunny. For people who work with it every day, humor can be maybe your way to stay sane for the crazy things that you see. Because I've heard some bad jokes where people would not laugh if they knew the situation. But if you work in that situation, laughter is maybe your way to handle what you just saw.
But I get joking about that privately amongst coworkers. Totally get that. That happens all the time. But like in public on live TV, like I would assume that there would be a decorum of like, okay, we handled the situation. The bank robber has been arrested and then move on. So I was very surprised that Carl, who seemed to take his job pretty seriously, especially from the false arrest episode, I was surprised that he chose to, make a public humorous display of what is a very serious job.
It is weird that he did it. I have seen people do it on TV too, like in public conversations. People who work in the field, they do it too. So the only saving grace I would give Carl in that situation of, wow, you just really made light of a bank robbery and people could have died, is maybe he's just an autopilot and he's like, yeah, so nobody died, so it doesn't really matter. I'm going to make a joke about it on television.
Yeah, another day in Chicago. This is where the zero logic thing comes in heavy for me. So Channel 13 thinking that a police officer who told a few jokes on the local news should qualify as their afternoon traffic reporter. I just didn't understand that. It's like, oh, you're fighting crime, so somehow that makes you qualified to go out there and give knowledge of the roads because, oh, you're funny, you're quirky, blah, 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 blah. And I don't know. What were your thoughts on all that? Did you pick up on that or no?
I did, and I picked on it. Okay, this is my bias again, coming back to civil service work. When you join the police department or you do anything that has to do with the police, part of your exam is being able to navigate the city and give people directions. So part of the exam, you literally have to get a map. They're like, hey, you need to direct somebody from here to here or a group of people from here to here. How would you do it? And you literally have to write it out. So the only thing I was thinking was like, okay, maybe the news station allows police officers to do that because they know during the civil service exam, they have to be good at navigation. And that's the only reason that I could think like why they would pick Carl to do this and not just call like the dispatch center where I'm pretty sure that they know what's happening in traffic.
Well, so it sounds like there's some realism to police officers needing to have some good traffic knowledge. And it makes sense because, like, say you got to be called to a bank robbery or whatever. It is very concerning if, as a police officer, you're like, okay, all right, before I do this, let me type in the GPS. Boop, 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 boop. like you probably should know where the fuck you're going. Like, all right, cool. I got a 110 on the 125 bridge. Stat, let's go. You can tell my police lingo is just great, right, Andrew?
You did good. You did good. I think you just dispatched a bomb threat to a bridge, but that's good.
Oh God. Well, I'm so sorry for wishing death to America. That was unintentional. Oh my God, I apologize. Did you notice Rachel's hair in this episode? I was not in love with it, to be honest with you. I thought, first of all, the brown in her hair was darker. It seemed permed, if I have that term correctly, as opposed to the curliness that we usually see. And the way it was shaped, it had a very quirky Amelia Bedelia kind of quality to it. Did you notice anything like that? Or were you just like, man?
Looking at her hair, it was something that stuck out to me. It wasn't a big thing, but I was like, either she pressed her hair or something, and it just looked like they didn't really style it. It's kind of like they were just kind of like, oh, hey, you're here, girl. Let's get you on set. And it didn't really look like they took a minute to style it or at least make it look like it's a part of the outfit, like with the structure of it. Because I couldn't figure if she was going out, she's staying home. What's happening with this hair?
I got the vibe of like, all right, so you're a teenage girl, like, and we're gonna fix you up. We're gonna put a blow dryer. We're gonna put the perm presser. We're gonna do everything. And then it just comes out like that weird 80s thing that Rachel came out with. That's the vibe I got. Mm-hmm. So whatever he was having in the last episode, I hope it comes back eventually. That's all I'm saying. That's just as someone who has a big crush on Thelma Hopkins, the more I watch her in this show.
Yes. Okay. Then, John, they have to honor your request. We need Rachel in different hairstyles just to see what she looks like. And then we'll find one that's perfect. When you find your perfect Rachel, you have to let us know.
We're going to redefine what the Rachel means. Fuck that friend shit. When we say the Rachel, we mean the Thelma Hopkins.
Yes, not the zebra haircut. We don't want that.
Yeah. God, if I need a zebra, I can eat it in cake form. I don't need it on a hair head. But you know what? Rachel had a funny line in this scene because I think it was the moment where Carl was like, oh yeah, I could be a star. I could be a traffic reporter. And the family was wondering like what he would go by. And, you know, Carl is content with just his natural first name. And Rachel's like, the name Carl doesn't sound like a traffic report. It sounds like a farm report. So I thought that was a cool line because if you think about it, yeah, I mean, if you're talking about like Chicago City traffic report, maybe like the traffic with Demetrius. But Carl, I don't know. I just feel like it's like, oh yeah, picking grass with Carl Wilkerson. I get what Rachel's saying.
Now that you say it that way, I agree. Because I didn't agree when Rachel made the joke. I was like, no, I get to see Carl doing the weather. But now that you say it out fully, it does sound like he's going to give you like the potato report or something. Like, how's the growth going? Yeah, Carl needed something big.
Did you remember Mama Winslow's line? So when Carl was insisting to Rachel that he won't change his name because Carl was his great-grandfather's name. And then Mama Winslow, deadpan, was just like, your great-grandfather's name was Lester. Carl was his horse. I just laughed out loud as this scene was ending. Did you remember that moment at all?
I did. And she ate the delivery, the deadpan of it all just made me laugh.
Oh my God. It was just so fucking, because like I thought that they were just going to end it on Lester, but the fact that they added on to it that like, oh, he had a horse and he was named Carl. It was like, yes. Oh my God. It was great. It was great. Anywho, so in scene 3, like we're in Leroy's, we have Eddie and Steve at a table. And did you notice that they're playing some generic funky music instead of Bobby Brown this time?
It was very generic. It was generic. It was this weird music. Did you notice the background noises were on a loop?
No, tell me more. What background noises were on a loop?
So once the music cuts out, because they stop the music, and then they're playing video game noises and like cafe sounds in the background, and you constantly hear this one little beep that kind of sounds like somebody's blowing up in the game or their character just died, and it repeats every 30 seconds on a loop.
I got to rewatch that. Oh my God. I thought I would catch something like that. Holy shit. These motherfuckers are so lazy with editing. Oh my God. I'm drawn to this cup on Eddie and Steve's table, the pattern on this cup. And you'll see Penny like hold this cup later on in the last moments of the episode. It looked like there was like a bunch of dark orange weeds on it. I know it's nothing to like really like pizzazz or stand out in the episode, but I was just like, huh, what an interesting looking cup. Like it wasn't like it wasn't a Dixie cup or anything. It was just we're gonna paint a bunch of dark orange weeds in a cup and then present it to children at a school.
Okay, now I have to see this. Is this like just one cup or is it like a cup everybody has?
I think it might be a cup that everybody has, but Eddie and Steve at their table having that cup, Penny holding the cup at the end of the episode when she was looking at Eddie in romantic awe. I guess, props, they just got some cheap cups from a dollar store, if that even existed back in 1990. And I just thought, you could have gone with anything. You could have gone with the red Solo cups or generic white cups, but no, you just had to have a bunch of orange weeds as if we're in a hay farm in middle of nowhere, Illinois or something.
I wonder maybe, no, okay, I gotta look because I did not pay attention to the cups and now I need to know what this cup looks like.
Yeah, it's quite something to be fascinated by. And this is again where, Steve is, I think he's lost in thought about something and he was just rambling on about how mucus comes in so many colors. And it was at that moment where I thought, wow, if it was legal to marry this guy, then I would marry him right now because we just seem to be in sync. There are a lot of things that are not talked about in the Black community, but I think especially a mucus and phlegm problem, maybe it may be on the top. It may be on the top. Think about it, Andrew. Mental health, mucus, phlegm, vulnerability. I don't know.
Okay, Jon, you're starting a campaign to get Black people in therapy and talking about their mucus.
Yeah, because think about it. Like, if you're coughing it up constantly and everybody's just like, oh, God, stop it. You sound ridiculous. Like, that could be a traumatic event in your childhood. That could, like, stain you as you're growing up.
It really could. Jon, I feel like you have a story behind this. There's something, and you're going to start the crusade here. I get the feeling.
Yeah, it's been following me for a long time. I've had the Mucinex. You know what I've been discovering lately that helps? I think, like, a mixture of Mucinex and the lemon cough drop that I sucked on. That's good. It didn't help that I ate like almost a pint of Ben & Jerry's before I got on Zoom with you. So I'm working on myself. I know it's frozen cow juice. I know you hate it, but I'm trying to do the work.
Look, the cough drop is a perfect step. It's all about harm reduction. There's no shaming here. If you like cow juice, you eat your cow juice. It is all about harm reduction, and you have a therapy method here of getting rid of the mucus. So we'll keep working with it to see how it works.
Yeah, we'll see. We'll see. And then Eddie leaves because he's impatient. Like, Eddie and Steve are together because, Steve is trying to convince Eddie that Bull Weston is going to come at some point and tear his arm up. But he doesn't show up. And Eddie's just like, all right, fuck it, I'm out of here. And Steve goes up to Rodney, who's sitting at another table, to ask if he'd like to hang out. Rodney says he'd rather eat dirt. And I thought that Steve's response of like, oh, you should eat sand. It's less binding. Thought that was great. Also, I was today years old when I found out there was a difference between sand and dirt. So judge me all you want. Did you always know there was a difference?
Yeah, I always knew there was a difference. It's okay.
Tell me the difference between, because Google was confusing when I tried to look up a definition. What is the difference between sand and dirt?
The main difference between sand and dirt, sand is a lot of times ground up rocks or seashells or matter that has been ground up through motions like in the ocean. And that's what creates sand. It's typically rocks, essentially, that are just very fine and crushed up into like that form. Dirt is actually wet and it contains more than just what sand has, how sand is typically very dry. Dirt is also earthworm feces because they poop dirt.
Oh, ew.
I know it sounds gross, but they do. They poop dirt.
So when I step out on my front yard, I am stepping out on grass, leaves, and feces underneath.
Oh, I mean, you're stepping on poop throughout your entire life. But don't be worried. It's not bad poop. It's just some of it happens to be worm poop.
All right, well, screw the toilet. I guess I'll just go on the ground then. I mean, what's the difference, right?
John, don't do that. Don't do that. Look at the documentaries from India right now, and you'll see the problem they're having with that. Don't do that.
People are dumb enough to like poop on the ground.
Well, it's literally a pandemic. Well, pandemic is probably the wrong word to use, but it's literally a public health crisis problem. It's called open defecation, and people do it. And it's gotten that bad that it is a figurative, not figurative, it's a literal health problem.
So just imagine, like, collectively, the billion people there, all their buttholes open wide, like insanely wide, and then just everything coming out. Like, you gave me an awful image. It's your fault. You can give me that look all you want. It's your fault. Don't say open defecation because it's... So the actor playing Bull Weston comes in, and I mean, look, I gotta say, I mean, he's coming off a bit intense. His acting, I know he's trying to be a bully, but he's trying a little bit too hard to be a bully. He's just like, hey, rat face. Like, he's just like really in it. And you got to give it up for the creativity of the writers. I'm being sarcastic here. Like, they were like, oh, we need a name for a bully. So let's just take the Y off the bully. And then boom, we have our name. Bull Wesson.
This is a moment that I was relating to you earlier. They are out of touch with what it is to be a kid and to be a bully. Because Bull Weston, I was like, really? You couldn't come up with anything else?
Yeah, it's gonna be, and this is not the only TGIF sitcom where this has happened. I mean, same thing with Boy Meets World. You'll hear on the Pod Meets World podcast, the cast members of Boy Meets World, they'll talk about how, like, these writers, they will put a high school setting in this show as if it's the 50s instead of the 90s, because remember the Harley Kiner from season 2 to whatever, like, he's a guy that is coming out of like fucking Grease the musical. Like, have you seen a New York Philly accented guy with a leather jacket around your school in the 90s? Probably not. So there's a big danger in adults who are 2 or 3 generations older writing for a kid's show, because they're going to think that, all right, what was relevant when we were kids is still going to be relevant now. And that's not the case. Always write from a perspective of, like, as young as possible. I think if they had like some 20-somethings on the staff, maybe some teenagers who are good at television writing, it could have made a difference.
Really could have. I couldn't connect with the bully storyline because you could tell it was written by adults. Adults see this as bullying. And if that's the type of bullying they had to deal with as kids, I feel sorry for them.
Yeah, we have evolved, I hope, quite a bit when it comes to bullying. And I did not like the bad hair day that Bull seemed to be having under that hat. It was like, what the fuck is that? Is that like a fro perm Jerry curl gone bad? It was something.
It was the bully hair. The bully hair. He's a bull. He doesn't wash his hair. They could have given him something better. Wardrobe really did Bull wrong.
Even though he was clearly nervous with his head down, I have to give props to Steve for attempting to stand up to Bull by saying that he's not going to pay him anymore.
In this scene, I have to ask you, did you have any emotional reaction to Steve's acting? Because I felt like we got a developing layer in this scene and later on when we see him get bullied again. So how did it make you feel when you saw it?
Well, you know what? It was nice to see a dramatic turn, Leo, for once. I think this is the first time that we're seeing this with this character, because so far it's been this one-note goofy nerd. I thought that he did a decent job playing from a very sad, vulnerable nerd place. And I think that will carry him well for the remainder of the show. I mean, he has many moments like that where, you get to see like, oh, it's not always fun and games being Steve Urkel. So I wasn't like, God, I'm crying. But like, I certainly believed him. I certainly was convinced that this was a difficult thing he was going through.
I can say I have the same reaction. I felt it too, where I was like, okay, I'm not going to cry, but it is nice to see a different range of acting from him.
Yeah. And then Urkel, of course, he's so fucking awkward and funny when Roddy goes up to him after Bull leaves and says he can't fight him. Urkel insists that he can. And then a supportive Rodney is like, okay, Urkman, goes in for like like a high five or a punch on the arm. It was like a playful punch on the arm. And Urkel was just like, you just broke my arm. And then there was like a little bit of silence, and then the scene just ends. I loved it.
I was hoping that everybody in the little cafeteria would have started laughing. Like, it just ended on a very silent note. And I thought that was a very funny joke.
Yeah. And maybe it was intentional that it ended on that awkward silency note, because maybe that was Family Matters' attempt at leaning into something that wouldn't be popular until years later, which is awkward comedy. How many comedies like The Office where you see them really play into the humor of tense, awkward silence?
Family Matters paved the way.
Family Matters paved the way for Michael Scott. That would be a really interesting connection. Then we go to scene 4. Rachel, I love, despite her hair, she's wearing another wonderful, long, flowery dress. But even though I liked the dress, combining it with the hair suddenly gave her a very Christian teachery vibe to me. And I wasn't all about that because I've seen her when I used to go to private Christian school back in the day. I need a little bit of edge. I need a little bit of secular sodomy to your outfit. And I got to Miss Goody Good.
Not you slutting up the nuns.
Look, man, this is what happens when you wake up well-rested and ready to comment on these episodes. You just come up with stupid shit like, Christian teacher, sodomize me.
So what do you think about her fashion progression up until now? Because we've seen her in 19 episodes at this point, different fashions each time. What are you thinking of her progression? What does it make you feel?
Well, it's interesting because I don't have much to say other than we've seen, or I recall Rachel in her exercise suit outfit. What do you call her? The spandex, the Jane Fonda.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that kind of thing. So I've recalled that. I certainly recalled her Rachel's first date outfits, the yellow banana spicy Mexican vibe dress. And I recall these flowery dresses. I recall that spicy date dress that she had in the last episode. I recall Rachel's fashion in little spurts because she's been more of a supporting character over the course of the season. Can you tell me differently? Like, what did you notice about the progression of Rachel's fashion? Because I'm interested in knowing.
I noticed that they play a lot with her proportions. So we're either getting bare shoulders, maybe short above the knee look, or we're getting shoulders covered and dressed down to the floor. Like, there's not really been like a happy medium, like a capri pant or like a sleeveless shirt and we still have shoulders covered. We haven't gotten those from Rachel yet, and I've been hoping to get them, but I feel like they're just really trying to play with her proportions. Like, how can we make her look on screen? She's noticeably taller than some of the other people, so maybe they're trying to make her look a little more weighed down. And that's what I thought with this heavier hair, heavier dress, because it seemed like it really muted her in the scene compared to everybody else.
Okay, interesting. And you know what? As we end season 1 and get into season 2, I'm curious as to like where they go further with the fashion, because I think that regardless, Thelma knows how to wear an outfit. At least we have that. Of course, we remember that Rachel, she's the creative artist of the family with her writing. So it makes sense that in this scene 4, she would want to help Carl with his traffic reporter presentation. This is a highlight for both of us, Andrew. The jokes are coming. Harriet's facial expressions were everything for me. It kind of defined what I was thinking, even though I was still in love with the scene, because it simply comes down to who in the hell would think it would be funny to clown around when you're reporting on serious car accidents. Now, I know to the traffic reporter, this is everyday stuff to them, like brushing their teeth. But, car accidents, a lot of us are lucky enough to not have them often. So when we do, it's a rare occurrence. It's a big event. So that's what I was leading with, and I liked how Harriet amusingly had those facial expressions of like, nuh-uh, this ain't gonna fly.
I cannot relate. I personally, for me, I would be in heaven if this was the news. Give me jokes. I don't care that something serious is happening. Give me jokes. Feed me something with laughter and still give me information, and I'm okay with it.
Okay, but you know what? Maybe you have that bias of like, you don't get into accidents as much as, say, I used to. So maybe with traffic being boring in your eyes because you are lucky enough to have a pretty calm driving situation, maybe that's okay. for someone who gets into like one accident a day or a month or a week, maybe it could be different. I don't know. We'll see. I will say, though, there was, you mentioned your joke that you liked. I liked the other joke that Carl and Rachel recited only because of how terrible it is. It's that type of joke where it's like, oh my God, it's so bad. It's so funny. The one about like, oh, what do Smokey the Bear and Billy the Kid have in common? Their middle name is both the. I was like, I had that moment where I did not laugh, but then I started to laugh. And Harriet sealed the deal when, Carl's like, oh, hey, do you get it? Do you get it? And Harriet's just like, yeah, I get it. I just don't want it in my living room. I loved it.
Harriet's response, that's my imaginary gay writer, just in her, just delivering these lines. The second joke I thought was hilarious too. My only problem, I'm just like, how do you incorporate this one into the news? This is a very specific thing, and traffic just doesn't seem the place.
Can you recite the first joke to me? Because I totally was not paying attention to when it was occurring in the episode.
So the first joke, and hopefully I wrote it correctly, a guy gets a call from his doctor, and the doctor says, I've got bad news for you that you only have 48 hours to live. And the guy says, well, what's the bad news? And he says, the doctor, I should have called you yesterday.
Okay. I get that. Because he's going to die today. That's the joke. And then someone drives over the Lincoln Tunnel and then drops to their death hearing that joke.
And they'll go out laughing. Would you not want to go on to glory with a smile on your face?
You know what? That, or I just want to be on the toilet when I go out laughing. I want to be on the toilet eating Ben & Jerry's. I want to have my cat on my lap. Like, I want it to be like the most Elvis weird ass way possible. I've thought about this, Andrew Vandertunt.
So I'm laughing because it sounds hilarious, John. And you also brought back a memory from 911 that I forgot.
Oh, what happened?
Okay. So I can't use names. I can't be super specific. But I was on a call at 911. A woman called in and she's very calm. And she says, I need an ambulance. My husband is dead. And so I'm like, okay. I'm like, she's very calm. So this is serious. He's most likely dead. So I'm getting information started. And I just ask, I'm like, so where is he? Can we move him to a safer place? Is there a way that we can try CPR? Or do you think he's beyond help? She says, he's beyond help. I know that he's dead. Or try not to laugh. She said, he's sitting on his ride-on mower right now.
Wait, what's a ride-on mower?
So you know the lawnmower that you can ride and drive like a car? Like a John Deere?
He died while mowing the lawn?
He was not mowing the lawn. So I was like, oh, okay. I'm like, is the lawnmower running? Is it out in the yard? And she said, no, it's in the garage because he was going to start it to cut the grass. And so she sits on the phone for a second and then comes back. And while I'm waiting for her to acknowledge me and talk on the phone, she's talking to somebody in the background. She let her daughter in the house and the daughter saw the dad. Now, I thought they were going to be emotional. This is what got me. She says he went out just like he wanted to do on the lawnmower, and I screamed.
Wow. That was his death wish?
That was where he wanted to go out, on his lawnmower. He was the happiest on his lawnmower. And like this mother and daughter in the background talking, acknowledging that this is exactly what he wanted. They weren't sad. They were just like, hey, we understand. We knew this was going to happen. And me, after all the things I've heard on the phone, that was the one time I was speechless. I was like, what? He wanted to die on the lawnmower of all places? But it was his happy place.
Well, one, there is some therapeuticness to lawn mowing. I can understand that, especially if you have the opportunity to sit down. And two, I wonder like if he actively like took something in his system to shut it all down and sat on the lawnmower. Like it seemed like something that is just too perfect to be spontaneous. I feel like he had to like actively plan his death.
No. And that is one thing that we thought working at 911. Sometimes you find the results of these things. He had a massive heart attack sitting on the actual lawnmower. And that's what took him out. And according to his wife, that is the way he wanted to go. And to this day, I hold that as a dear memory. Those people, I send you nothing but positive vibes. And I hope you are okay with me saying your story. No one's going to know who you are because I'm not giving you any other information. But that is still like a shining moment for my career as a 911 dispatcher of hearing that call. And you just brought back the memory.
Wow. Well, what a story. What a story. And I hope he's enjoying himself in lawnmower heaven.
Cutting the grass with Jesus.
There you go. And Jesus is wearing John Deere pants. Do they have pants from John Deere?
They probably do. I can see Jesus in a John Deere hat and pants, and he's got his little stogie, and he's like, "You got to cut that grass."
Yeah, right. Want a little Bud Light with me while I'm blessing you? A little Bud Light and a blessing.
I'm stealing that. I'm stealing that.
Oh, what? You want a little Bud Light and a blessing?
Uh-huh.
Yeah. Better steal that. Oh my God, that's funny. All right, scene 5. Roddy is in the kitchen telling Eddie and Laura about the Urkel and Bull Wesson showdown. And I am so fascinated by how Eddie and Rodney are friends based on their contrast in fashion. Because Eddie lately, this motherfucker is like dressing up every time like he's ready for date night. You know, he's always got a shirt tucked into dress pants. It could be a sweater, could be a button down. He's always looking spectacular. And Rodney is just super cash, man. He's just got the blue stripe polo, the jeans with a specific kind of pattern that I cannot point out. Do you know what kind of pattern jeans Rodney is wearing? It's like, it kind of has like a dotted, faded white thing going on.
I don't know. I thought it was like acid wash, but then I Googled acid wash, and I don't think that's what it was because it didn't really look the same.
Yeah. I don't know. I just find it interesting that Rodney and Eddie can develop a friendship when, just by the way they dress so differently. It's like, oh, you guys seem to be on two different classes of state of mind.
It's kind of like Bobby Brown and Kurt Cobain. Like, they have very specific fashion choices. And I'm like, okay, this is interesting.
You know what? Given the drug history of both of those men, I don't even want to know what a night out with them would have been like. Can you imagine?
I would partake. I want to experience that night. I get the feeling it would probably be a ton of fun.
I mean, look, there could be heroin, there could be cocaine, there could be meth. Are you saying you're still down?
You know what? You only live once. So, yeah, so let's just go. Come on. I'll bring a bottle of water.
Yeah, to wash down the crack. I mean, yeah, that makes it go down easy, right?
Yeah.
Nothing like water to wash off the effects of narcotics.
Water cleanses everything. We'll just go with that. I'll be like, you guys, I'm here for you. Let me drink a little water. Let's all stay hydrated while we do this.
Water and time. That's all you need when you ingest methamphetamines. I'm just going to say meth. Anyway, Rodney.
I'm sorry, you just sounded so disappointed.
No, in your night of drug-fueled passion? I don't care. You do what you want.
No, you sounded disappointed when you're like, I'm just gonna call it meth because I can't say anything.
Yeah, no. I mean, you know how it is. Sometimes you have like really difficult words to say, and that's one of those words where it's like, damn it, I wish I could say it because I'm certainly not going to take it.
Trust me, I get it.
All right, so Rodney, I love his lines. So he's saying some lines that some old fucking people would write for him, and it turns out some old fucking people did write some lines. Like, remember when he was like, oh, Bull has been 7th grade since the Carter administration, and they don't call him Bull because he worked for Merrill Lynch. I'm like, so I get that there can be comedy behind like, oh, hey, isn't it funny how this kid is saying something that an adult would say? But at the same time, the references that Rodney is just putting out there, there's still a slight disconnect.
I agree. It's not something I thought about until you brought it up now. Him saying the Carter administration and Merrill Lynch are something I have only heard on the Golden Girls or somebody very old saying those things. I didn't know what Merrill Lynch was until about 2 years ago. That's how adult that was. And I was like, what? Why is this kid saying these? And then he kind of didn't get any laughs from the audience from that line either.
I mean, I heard some laughs, but it wasn't like, raucous Urkel laughs. It was just kind of medium, maybe polite-ish kind of laughs. I don't even know if Rodney was born during the Carter administration. I think, if anything, he might have been like 2 or 3. So for him to make that joke was quite interesting. And then, we're leading very dramatic. We have a solemn Urkel coming in. He's got a personal tooth necklace that he wants to give to Laura because he thinks this big showdown with Bull is going to kill him. Remember that tooth necklace with the little sesame seed in between the teeth?
It sounds very murderous when you call it a tooth necklace. It was his retainer.
I mean, Urkel, we're going to have a lot of moments. I mean, we've already had moments so far where he's giving off serial killer vibes. Like, oh, I just keep my females in my back pocket.
I mean, very true. His retainer being a gift you give somebody, I immediately was grossed out by it. Have you ever had a retainer, or do you know what a retainer like does?
I've never had a retainer. My sister could have had one, but my mom was just like, "Ma, honey, honey, I ain't got the money." Like that's she didn't say that, but I wish she said that because it's such a Black thing to say and it rhymes. But no, I've never had any retainer of any kind. I think you have had, right?
I've had a retainer and I make retainers every single day. It is disgusting. Don't ever give somebody your retainer as a gift. That is the grossest thing you could ever do.
I thought that was a sign of love if you like exchange retainers, you know?
Ugh.
Oh,
no.
can you imagine two people on a date with retainers in their mouths making out and then they just exchange the retainers, like they exchange the saliva that they're already going to exchange? No,
Ugh, it probably has happened already.
Hey, they're retaining their love that way.
Retaining something. Oh.
They're retaining some nastiness. That's what they're retaining. And also, like, it's very exaggerated when Steve thinks he's gonna get killed, because imagine if Steve actually got killed. What would happen to Bull? Like, would he be in juvie? Would he be locked up forever? Like, that would probably happen, right?
Oh, definitely. They would have locked him up or something. So nobody's going to kill you.
Don't be offended. I'm going to bring up Steve's titty pocket again. Did you notice that he had 4 blue pens and 2 black pens in his titty pocket? Now, the color does not matter as much as the fact that he had 6 pens in his titty pocket. Why do you need that many pens?
I did not notice the pens at all. But now I'm like wondering, like, how many pens do you use in one day?
It's hard not to notice because they're doing a close-up as Urkel's given the big dramatic. You see the black and blue pen in the titty pocket, and then you see the bright blue Mr. Rogers sweater. Like, you pick up on these things. What gives, Urkel? Like, you're afraid that everything is, like, every single pen is going to run out of ink within 2 seconds? Like, just choose 1 black pen and 1 blue pen, and then you'll be done. Like, he looks like a very paranoid teacher that wants to have as many color codes as possible to figure out how he's marking the grades for the students. It was odd.
It's weird to have that many pens, but then maybe he could be the kid in class who writes down everything. So maybe his pens will run out throughout the day. Like maybe he runs out of ink by first period and then he's got his backup pen. And then by the end of the day, maybe he's only leaving with 1.
Yeah, it all comes down to that 1 pen. Who's going to be my 1 pen bachelor rose? As dramatic and as exaggerated as this scene is with Urkel about to die, I still am very much in favor of him standing up for himself, because he could have easily been like, well, you know, Eddie, please, like he could have just continuously begged Eddie or someone to help him out. But he has this mixture of acceptance of like, all right, I'm small, this guy's big, no way I can beat him. And also I'm going to do whatever I can since I'm going out anyway, to say that, nah, brah, like you're not taking away my lunch money, okay? This 50 cents that I get from my abusive parents, I'm going to keep it. It might go a long way to get me my, I don't know, olive flavored anchovy paste, since he wants to mix it up.
Ooh, that sounds sour.
Oh, yeah. We go to scene 6. Eddie seeks advice from Carl about Urkel and Bull Weston and starts by saying Urkel is going to get beat up. And maybe you also noticed this, but I found it very weird to start the conversation that way, because it makes it seem like the beat up is bound to happen rather than something that doesn't have to happen, something that could be prevented. So maybe saying something like, oh, Dad, Bull wants to beat up Urkel, or Bull plans to beat up Urkel. I think that would be great.
I can see that. It does make sense because it does sound very definitive the way Eddie said it. Like, oh, he's getting beat up. There's nothing we can do about it.
And then Carl responding with, what did he do? Referring to Urkel. I could be thinking too much into it, but I found it to be a little weird, because I feel like if it comes to an instance where anyone is under threat from a bully, I think the response should immediately, especially from a police officer, should immediately be, okay, sounds awful. When is it supposed to happen? And how do we stop it?
You're not alone. I had a very visceral response to Carl, just like, oh, what did he do? Immediately, I was like, so we're going to blame the victim here?
Yeah.
Like, I'm like, why did you ask what did he do, as opposed to, oh, okay, how can we stop this? Like, you're a police officer. So in this scene, Carl let me down a lot.
Did Urkel do something to provoke Bull? Was there temptation?
But there's unresistible temptation. There must have been an extreme circumstance. Fuck you people. I'm sorry. I had to say that. I got angry all over again. I can't stand those people.
Yeah, that quiet on set trauma is coming back.
Mm-hmm.
And then Carl leaving the final decision to Eddie on what to do about Urkel and Bull is, it's sort of reflective on how I feel about this. I find it to be very tricky because, like, on the one hand, yes, Urkel could definitely use some assistance from Eddie. He's a very small man. Eddie's a very big man. I get that. The size difference is there. On the other hand, there is a valid argument. And, like, we all take responsibility for our own lives and what's going on. We don't need to take responsibility for other people's lives. So Eddie could just very well let Urkel try to stand up for himself as best as possible. And then you have the other argument, which is, hey, where are the school authorities? May not be a bad idea to report this to a principal, a superintendent. They could probably step in, right? I mean, yeah, the fight is happening off school grounds, but considering that I assume Bull and Steve go to the same school, maybe that's enough of a connection where an adult from the schooling system would be like, okay, don't worry, Urkel, I got your back. I would assume that Urkel is a favorite student amongst the teachers anyway, right?
I'm going to disagree and say the teachers probably don't like Urkel. I could see them easily getting tired of his antics and not liking him in their classrooms. So I can see that the teachers may not be the most useful resource, but I will say I was immediately annoyed that Carl did not suggest, let's get the staff involved. Let's get teachers involved. Let's go to the principal. Like, let's do something. Like, Carl, for being a police officer, everything that he said in this conversation really lacked the urgency or response or care that somebody who is a first responder I would expect to have, especially the fact that you know this child and how small this child is and relatively defenseless. Do you really think that you should have just said, oh, well, you got to figure out what you're going to do, son? There should have been some kind of intervention here, and it just never happened. But I mean, they're not reporting that Herb and Diane are abusing this child and not feeding him, and Carl's supposed to be a mandated reporter. So there's some huge consistency errors here for me.
Yeah, Carl's too busy trying to figure out what his next joke is for the traffic report. No, do your damn job as a police officer / moral servant to the Chicago community. Scene 7 should not even be here, but it is. It is a very short and unnecessary scene. It literally is just Rachel, Harriet, Mama Winslow, and I think Judy. They're just gathered around the TV waiting to watch, like they're waiting for Carl to do his traffic report. That's it. Do you have any thoughts about this scene?
No, I have no thought on it because it is like a blink of an eye and it's over for no reason. They set up this whole scene.
Yeah, and then I felt like, now that I think about it, I'm going to get a little bit of criticism on this traffic report thing because I do feel like the traffic report story was shoved rather far into the end. Like, they were trying to make more way into the bully story, and the traffic report story, which could have been a larger B story, was just like, oh yeah, we're just going to kind of, rush this into a one scene thing, wrap it all up there, and then boom, we're good. Now, this is where I got to shout out to one of our listeners, Reggie Grace on Instagram. Some time ago, he messaged us at Family Matters Rewatch Pod. Did you notice the stage manager, who I believe is named Jimmy, at the television station? He's basically wearing Buddy Goodrich's sweater from when Buddy Goodrich paid Carl an unsolicited visit to try to get himself out of court. Remember that sweater?
I do remember that sweater. I didn't realize the stage manager had that on.
Yeah, I got to send you the screenshot of what Reggie sent me. I'm like, oh my God. Like, I wouldn't be surprised if this was leftover from the costume department from the false arrest episode, and they decided, like, hey, let's just reuse it. Nobody's going to remember. Aha, no. You and I, we are passionate Family Matters whores. We recognize it.
You sneaky little people. You were trying to pull a fast one on us, but you can't get it over on us.
Yeah, we saw you and we rode you slow with that sweater observation. Anyway, Carl gets suddenly told seconds before airtime that the jokes he was planning to use cannot be told. And once the camera goes live, God, the funniest deer in headlights, nervous smile that I've ever seen. I just loved every minute of it.
It was good. When the guy is like, oh, that's why we fired the other guy for his jokes, I just looked at Carl's face and the way he served that nervous look, I couldn't stop laughing.
Oh, and then good for Harriet. Like, we go back to the Winslow house. Harriet, Rachel, Judy, Mama Winslow, they're watching the TV. They're watching Carl. being the supporting wife. Like, oh, Carl, you could do it. Come on, you could speak. But Rachel, Judy, and even Carl's own mother, they've given up on him. They're like, oh, God, he looks like a waste of time. And I found it delightfully ironic because Rachel, Judy, and Mama Winslow, they started off as being like excited and happy for Carl. Harriet being the one starting off with like, oh, God, I'm not crazy about these jokes that you're about to tell. And then it just kind of gets switched. Like Harriet notices that at the last minute, the husband could use some affirmation and the wife is there.
I'm all for it. I was happy to see Harriet's encouragement. It was so weird to me. I know, did it feel weird to you when you watched it? Because it felt weird to me watching Mama Winslow switch up so fast. Like, I was like, this is not a realistic thing. And if this is the type of parent you are, Mama Winslow, I'm concerned. But she switched up so fast and was like, turn the channel. I don't want to watch anymore.
Yeah. Like 1 second it was turn the channel. I don't want to watch anymore. And then once Carl got a groove going, because I think it was the moment where Jimmy, the stage manager, was like, oh, hey, read the traffic report, when Carl literally were not, it wasn't landing. And I was surprised because I thought that Carl was still going to freeze and not do much of anything with the traffic report information. But suddenly he looks at the script and he's just like, oh, wait, that's not right. I'm going to tell you what's right. You just follow the 124 to the 105 and hey, it's right by the donut shop in case you want to get a bite to eat. Like, it was fantastic. And as you said, Mama Winslow suddenly forgot what she said a second earlier and was just like, oh, that's my boy. I knew he could do it.
No, you didn't, Mama Winslow. You turned on Carl. Carl is so traumatized. This is terrible.
Yeah, she does that black mother thing that I've noticed very much, where they could turn on a dime like that. They could, be like, oh, God, man, what am I going to do with you? And then once you succeed in something, could be a second later, my God, I knew you could do it. No, I just did it for your own good. I'm sorry. If I said that, that meant I love you for saying that. Like you know what I mean, right?
Oh, yeah. That was 3 minutes ago. We're in the future now. Stop talking about the past. I know.
Anyway, Harriet, when she was happy for Carl getting back to his groove, did you notice she gave a way to go, Carl?
We got a way to go, Carl, in this episode. And finally, it's a positive way to go, Carl. So I'm very happy about that.
I do remember another genuine way to go, Carl. I don't recall who said it and what episode it was, but I know this is not the first genuine way to go, Carl. So hold that thought.
Okay.
And then we go to our final scene, I believe. Yep, our final scene. So we're back at Leroy's. The ultimate Urkel and Bull bloodbath is going to go down. Did you notice that Rodney, he had, what was that jacket that Rodney had on? It was a thick jacket, and I hated how the sleeves were rolled up because it just looked ugly with that baggy outfit that he was wearing anyway.
I think it was a bomber jacket. And I didn't like it either. It just didn't look good. Like, his style, again, gives me very grunge. Like, he just throws things on. And sometimes it's worked when we've seen him on camera, but this jacket, I didn't like it.
Yeah, it reminded me of a jacket that I saw a lot of guys that I was either classmates with or friends with because I wanted to be cool, like back in middle school, that they wore that jacket. And it almost seemed like it was a gang member's jacket because of how many of them were wearing the same kind of jacket. And it was always black too. Like, oh my God, hold on, you knit in the house. Like, it's
just so you know, that is getting used. That is going to be used.
By the way, I will confirm that I did have a long sleeve black G-Unit shirt back in middle school. You're trying to fit in, you're trying to be cool, you're trying out things. Let's just leave that back in the early 2000s.
Okay.
Okay. And then I just realized, it's not until this scene, Andrew, that I realized that I want to just say shame on all of these kids for basically, like, the kids that are surrounding Urkel and Bull, like, ready to watch this fight. They're ready to be entertained. It's like, motherfuckers, y'all are the 1990 equivalent of those people that just pull out their phones to just record someone getting assaulted on the subway instead of actually helping the person getting assaulted. Like, that's, yes. Like, go help Urkel out. Like, this is not a great moment for him.
They didn't even have to touch Bull. They could have all just stared at him and surrounded Urkel. They could have threw their food at them, cover him in food. He would have left and been so scared because all these kids are showing they're not afraid of him. It was angering.
Yeah, it's like 15 to 20 kids against one big guy. I mean, yeah, big guy, but he's clearly outnumbered, so it could have worked. And then, I did like Urkel's nervous line as Bull walks in. Remember, Urkel's he's sitting on the table. He's awaiting his impending death, and he looks at Bull right behind him, and he's like, "Oh, good afternoon, Bull. You're looking dapper as usual."
Only in an Urkel way will he call a bully dapper.
He's anything but dapper.
He was disheveled. Very bad.
And then, hey, heroic Eddie walks in to stop the fight. I don't like that audience applause. Did you notice that it sounded very fake and pre-recorded compared to the studio audience audio quality that we've heard throughout the episode?
Oh, yeah, it was definitely candle clapping. Like, it was definitely generated.
And I'm thinking it's because the actual studio audience did not applaud, and maybe in post-production, the editor or the producer was just like, oh, this sounds weird that Eddie is coming in silently, so no reaction. And I would argue, no, like, that actually intensifies the drama of this moment where Eddie is coming in, because it's like, whoa, Eddie's coming. What's going to happen? Are they going to fight? Like, I think it would be perfect to have that you could hear a pin drop kind of silence.
That would have been perfect. I didn't like the audience clapping. I didn't understand it. It didn't really make sense to me. So the silence would have been very effective.
Like, did you expect Bull to give up as quickly as he did? Or did you think that Bull gave up quickly? Like, because, you know, Eddie defended Urkel, and I certainly didn't think that Bull would attempt to fight Eddie. I thought that he was kind of cower when Eddie came in, but okay, he attempted to fight Eddie. Eddie did a nice duck and punch move, and then Bull was just like, I'm going to go out. Like, I thought that it could have been more of a showdown. What were your thoughts?
It could have been if Eddie didn't punch him in the stomach. Because, I mean, if you get punched in the stomach, it's going to knock the wind out of you if it's hard enough. And that's kind of the reaction I feel like Bull was going for. Like, whoa, the wind got knocked out of me and I'm scared. I do kind of wish we got a little bit more, like a little like choke hold or like a little arm hold or something. And Bull had to like submit, like, oh, I'm too weak. That would have been more believable. But I think the part that offended me most in this scene is the punch that Bull threw. It was so terribly choreographed. It was so bad.
Really? I didn't pick up on that. I mean, to me, it just seemed like a classic, like, oh, he's going in for a punch. Eddie ducked at the right time. But what did you find that was badly choreographed?
He had that Three Stooges stance, like, why I ought to punch you. And I'm like, no, this is not realistic. It's so bad.
And here's where I talk about Penny, because throughout the episode, I was thinking in the back of my mind, wait, was Penny in a deleted scene? I don't see her. And then I just find that she wasn't necessary in the episode because she just pops up at the last minute. Here she is amongst the spectating kids. She's got her blue and yellow rhombusy sweater. She's holding that, you know, dark orange weeded cup with attitude, but also with romantic awe. And it's a callback to the Laura's first date thing. You know, she's looking at Eddie and she's just like, oh my God, Eddie, you're wonderful. And do we ever see that develop into something? Because it's a callback to something that only you and I, like if we're intense Family Matters fans, we would remember.
It's like you said, it's a tie back where it's like, we know that they're trying to add this narrative that Laura's friend has a crush on her older brother, but she's never around for the storyline to develop of her having this whimsical crush on Eddie. And it just seems weird the way they added it in.
Yeah. Do you think she was necessary in this episode at all, based on the fact that she was just there for like a millisecond to just say that? Like, I felt like any random actor could have done that.
My only scene that I think she would have been relevant in is when all the kids were in the kitchen at the Winslow's house, and she could have been over there talking with the kids and just hanging out. That's the only spot. Honestly, she could have been not in the episode at all, and it wouldn't have mattered much.
And then Urkel exclaims in celebration, all right, everybody, yay, drinks are on me. And I got the joke. I thought it was a kind of a clever joke when the kids literally poured the drinks on him. And then, of course, you know, Urkel does his little Laura, my princess dance afterwards to indicate that he just took it all in good stride. You know, I also thought like, oh, this is just a reinforcement of how awful kids can be and how maybe we didn't completely learn our lesson about bullying. Like, he's still being picked on, even though he got relieved from Bull.
That is an interesting take because I didn't take that away from the scene.
Oh.
The scene at the end, I got, again, why are we including these more adult themes in with the child actors? Like, oh, everybody's drinks is on me. I've never in my life as a kid have said drinks are on me. That is such an adult term, and that is the only time I've ever used or heard it. So I wasn't like offended, like, oh my God. But it was like, what? Y'all gonna have given anything else here? Like, drinks are on me?
And then Carl eventually enters Leroy's, claiming he was on the way home from the TV station. He wanted to stop stop by for a bite or a drink, but, he was just checking on Eddie to, see if he made his decision. Carl and Eddie, they have their moment talking about this decision. I did not know why the sappy background music was so loud. I don't know if you detected that. It almost drowned out their voices.
It was like they were at the Oscars and they were getting played off the stage. Like, I didn't understand the music.
Yeah. Rich Carell's just like, all right, guys, come on, speed it up. Time's up. And then finally, when Eddie explains to Carl how he had to physically defend himself from Bull, I found it slightly confusing how Carl went from like, hey, son, fighting's not the answer. And then almost the next breath, it was like, hey, you showed him how to do the Winslow punch, right?
So fighting was the answer the whole time.
That's our episode.
All right, y'all. So our rating system here, we are rating this episode based on the courses of a meal. So our appetizer, that's what wet your whistle, what brought you into this episode, what captivated you in the episode. Maybe you just felt like, oh, I could go for a little extra of this. And then your entree, that's what really filled up your stomach. That's what you feel hit the pit of your stomach and you're like, ooh, this is good. It's got me nice and full. It's little steak and potatoes. It's heavy and there's content to it that you want. Then we've got our dessert. Tops everything off. It's that little tasty little morsel treat, a little cherry on top of your frozen cow juice that just makes it ring. And then the last thing we have is your junk food. This is no nutrition. There's nothing here. You could live without this. Honestly, throw it out. It probably is like those chips from 4 days ago sitting in the backseat of your car as you listen to this. That person, you know who you are.
Oh, you don't want to know the beef pot roast stains that are on my car seat right now. Look, man, I DoorDash and Uber Eats for a living. I have no choice but to eat in my car while I'm dropping off deliveries. Of course, I'm going to have food stains all over my seats.
John, I just imagine this giant roaster in your car full of pot roast.
No. And what's even worse, because I'm too lazy to find a microwave at a gas station, I eat that beef pot roast cold, Andrew. Can you imagine eating cold beef pot roast when you're making deliveries for like 12 plus hours a day?
No, it probably is not appetizing, but John, I'm going to give you a little tidbit here. When I DoorDash, I turn on my, the window defogger in the front with all the air coming out of your car. Mm-hmm. Sit your food up there with a little bit of tape to hold it in place. It'll heat your food while you're doing deliveries.
That sounds so ghetto. Oh my God.
Oh, it's deliciously ghetto.
All right. Well, on that note, do you have a deliciously ghetto take on this episode here?
I do. So this episode, there's a couple things here that are in my rating that maybe you don't have to do fully with the episode itself as far as the acting, but has to do with a lot of what we experienced in this episode. The appetizer for me in this episode was Eddie's fashion. Every scene that we saw Eddie in, his fashion was updated. It was current for the time. It was styled perfectly. And they're doing really good with the color blocking on Eddie. It's looking good. He looks like a member of the family, more integrated, following their color schemes. And it just doesn't seem random, like they've gotten random clothes for him. So that really drew me into the episode. And then sitting and watching him and Eddie developing as an actor in front of our eyes is really nice to see. This is all still part of the appetizer because Eddie really sold this episode for me. The entree of the episode, the portion that I want more of that I could have really done well with. You guys gave me like the calorie counters meal here. It was very light on what I wanted substance in, and that was Carl's storyline. Carl's storyline of doing the actual news would have been amazing all on its own. I am obsessed with the news, so that's why I loved it so much. And I have to say the shining moment for me of the episode is when Carl perks up and is like, no, take this, don't take that, service road. Here's the donut shop. And did it. And I would have loved that to turn into something more. Like we get a scene of Carl at the donut shop and the donut shop owner is like, why do you keep referring to us? We can't keep up with your orders and now you don't get jelly donuts. We had such a good, fantastic base for a story there that I want more of it. So that was in my entree. My entree was not satisfying. I did send it back to the kitchen. Then dessert for me is Screaming Sarah. Sarah screaming her little butt off every time Urkel came on screen. I laughed every time we heard this person scream. And it was always that woo, or there's that one time where she screamed and it sounded like somebody was killing her. Like she sounded frightened. And I'm like, why is she so adamant every time Urkel's on camera? And she's a character all on her own. So Sarah, you sold me on this episode. And then as far as junk food, I have to go with everything that involved the kids and the bullying. That was junk food to me. I did not care for this storyline at all. I don't think it was handled well. I don't think that we got a full resolution of the situation. I do feel that there were other opportunities that could have prevented a fight from even happening that would have been far more interesting to see occur. And I just don't think it was good. So that's my rating.
My appetizer is Sarah. Love me some Sarah. So I think because we had seen it or heard it in the cold open, it kind of can count as something that like kicks off the episode, really gets us off on a high note, you know? Woo! Like Sarah, she is just a woman with passion or a girl with passion. I don't know, but she's the Urkel fan that we're going to need for the next 9 years. And trust me, you know, when Urkel gets to a point where he gets full-on applause as he walks in, there's going to be Sarah in the background being like, I started all that. I was the OG. And for some reason, Sarah's going to have that grovelly, deep voice that I just said because, you know, she ages very quickly over the course of 9 years. She goes from a child to a 92-year-old. So there's that. The main course to me is the fact that I thought there was lots to think about when it comes to bullying. Questions like when is it appropriate to step in and help the victim out? When can you leave it to the victim to defend themselves? Contacting school authorities. Definitely how fellow classmates can play a big role in stopping the bullying rather than being dickheads who just want to watch a fight go down. That was a very thought-provoking, filling main course for me. I think I would akin it to the largest baked potato that you could imagine. You eat it and it makes you think as to what you did because it's a large-ass baked potato and it's just sitting in your stomach. Like the baked potato that is sitting in your stomach because of how large it is, this whole bullying thing just sits in your mind. How can we make this better so that there's less bullying in our kids' future? Our dessert. I'm sorry, but I did not laugh harder than I did with Mama Winslow's line from scene 2. A reminder that Rosetta is a fucking G when it comes to these deadpan lines. I want to see the horse named Carl pop up in this show. I think that would be appropriate. I think Carl and the horse doing a little neigh off, that would be great. Please give me that, and I will make that a bonus dessert. And then finally, junk food. Penny, because I thought she played a substantial enough role being introduced as Laura's best friend and the Laura's first date episode, that in itself a substantial episode because we get Urkel, who changes the course of the show. I thought that her placement in this episode was just really flawed. I think that with characters like Penny, who could clearly be developed, clearly could have maybe a storyline of her own, like she could have been what Laura's eventual friends were, like when Laura grew up. I thought just kind of relegating her to like, oh yeah, we're just gonna like push her in the end and just have her be like, oh, Eddie, and then just go away. No, I don't like that. In addition to the horrid junk food, I thought that Rodney could have easily been replaced by someone else. I thought that based on the big way that Rodney has been displayed as Eddie's friend who has fucked up his grades, Eddie's friend who has got him in trouble with his parents when they had the party, like I think for such a significantly eventful and unlikable character to just put him in there and make it even worse, but in a smaller sense by being like, oh, you know, he's just a kind of one of many kids who think Urkel is nothing but dirt or whatever. No. What are we doing, Rodney? Now, in your opinion, do you think that the writers and producers think that we as the audience are into Rodney? Or do you think that there's some intention to make Rodney that unlikable, peer pressury friend?
I think they thought that we would like Rodney because they could have easily replaced Rodney with any random person. Honestly, this is when they should have brought in Waldo. This would have been a perfect moment to introduce Waldo. And I think they thought that I think that they thought the show needed Rodney or a character like Rodney, and it didn't. He's not good at all. And we really could have done without him.
And you know what? Waldo, although he doesn't have much of a brain, thank God that they put him in because God knows how many seasons we could have tolerated Rodney. I mean, we have Waldo, who like, yeah, he's a dumb guy, but like he has a heart. I cannot wait to see the development of what is now called Guy in Towel. That's about it. So that is our rating. If you have any opinions, questions, comments, concerns, whatever about this episode, let us know. thedeliciousrecap@gmail.com. You can follow us, comment, whatever. YouTube, TikTok, Threads, Facebook, Instagram, @Family Matters Rewatch Pod for now. And Andrew, I want you to just entertain me. I'm so selfish. Tell me what the creepy stalkers can do, and then tell me what the normal people can do when it comes to following you on social media.
Okay, so if you are a creepy stalker and you follow me on social media, you need to like and share my content. Okay? That is if you are creepy and stalking me, at least make it worth my time. If you are not creepy and stalking me, I hope you still like and share my content and like and share the podcast. But you can find me on all of the social media websites, every single one of them. I've made sure I'm on all of them. Just search Vandertunt. So Vandertunt, and you will find me. I am the only person who goes by that name on every social media app. So there's no way you cannot find me.
Love it, love it, love it. Oh, God, I'm racing to the heavens because we are getting closer and closer to the end of this season. We are in the 20s. Our next episode is going to be season 1, episode 20, The Candidate. Original air date, March 23rd, 1990. I cannot tell you, Andrew, how happy I am that we will soon get to say that we finished season 1 of Family Matters. Did you know that we started recording this season in October?
I am not going to lie to you. When I pulled up my watch list and I was like, wait, we're at episode 20. A part of me, my whole body was just like, whoa, this feels good.
Yes, it's going to be quite delicious. And speaking of which, I would hope that you would take the time to sign us out in a very, oh God. You know, I'm going to give you a keyword because I like how creative you can get. I want you to sign us out using the stains that I have left in my car of beef pot roast.
Okay, so this is a good one because I thought about this today because stains are hard to get out of things. And you know what's a stain right now? Florida. You are a stain on the United States of America, and I feel sorry for you because you don't have deliciousness ringing in your state right now.